Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Fernando Ribeiro from Moonspell to talk about the butterfly effect. It's a pleasure and an absolute honor to have you on the channel. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Greetings from Portugal, and it's glad for me also to be in your channel and also to hear my name spelled right, Fernando Ribeiro, which is awesome.
I know how you feel because nobody spells Pedro Almeida or pronounces Pedro Almeida correctly, ever.
Yeah, I always teach people that want to learn the Portuguese from Portugal, you really have to close your lips and speak like with a little stone in your mouth because it's a very deep kind of thing. And to get the right accent from Portugal, not from the Brazilian Portuguese, you have to say Almeida. It has a little bit of a deep tone into it. And I mean, a lot of people, my name is quite easy. It's like the ABBA song, Fernando. There's also this name overseas, but I always get called a lot of stuff like Francisco, Ferdinand.
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 That's funny.
You just pick and choose, And sometimes I'm like, well, but even in Brazil, when I went there once and I was in the airport picking up a coffee at Starbucks or something, I said, "What's your name?" To put on the cup, I say, "Fernando." What? I said, well, Fernando, or something like that. And then she got it right, and it was in Brazil.
Before we talk about the album, because obviously that's the reason why we're here, is to talk about the Butterfly Effect comes out, the reissued comes out on August 7th on Napalm Records. I want to ask you about Chaos Theory and the Butterfly Effect in general. It's been 21 years since the album came out and since the idea for that album originated. How are your views on that, on Chaos Theory and the actual Butterfly Effect?
Well, I have to say Moonspell always likes to be, to have a zoom out and broaden our horizons when it comes to subjects. So back then in 1999, even though it was so many years ago, it was a similar situation to what we are living now. Fortunately, it was a lot of rumors, a lot of fake expectations. But if you just rewind into the year of 1999, there was a lot of chaos and there was a lot of apocalyptic theories springing up, like there will be a big computer crash called the I2K. I still remember the name.
Yeah.
Planes are going to fall. The stock market will go under attack, under a cyber attack. And I think even though we had the theory back then, we didn't have the technology to do that. So I got really inspired by this. I did some reading, especially a guy named Edward Lawrence that coined the term the butterfly effect. Obviously, it's a metaphor, but on the other hand, it's a very accurate metaphor for 99. And now for 2020, with all the situation that we are living in, that you cannot really escape in any interview how's things in Portugal, how are you living through the COVID-19 pandemics. But if you think hard about it, it was just like a small event in an Asian market, someone that ate something that wasn't supposed to be eaten, that created a big wave, a big tidal wave of virus epidemics that has gone as far as to North America, frozen the economy. A lot of people will die, not just from the virus, but especially from the conditions and the chaos that was created. I see coming, or fast forwarding into the actual times. I think the butterfly effect can be read and even listened to, as far as the Moonspell album goes, under a different light that still makes sense. Obviously, the chaos theory is something of science to explain erratic behavior from all sorts of things, plants, animals, society, ecosystems. But I think that science can be applied all the time to society, mathematics, statistics. This is now the kingdom of social science, to call it this way, and it makes sense even in our daily life. Sometimes we make something in the past that's just going to be like, oh, just this time, it's just this little thing, and then it comes back and bites you in the back after a couple of years. So the butterfly effect is a metaphor for our life, and also how life is unpredictable and how such small things can create such big masses.
Mm-hmm. And looking back at the record, I looked at the first three albums before the Butterfly Effect. This album is so unique. and so different when you look at what you guys had done up until that point. If you can go back in time, what was your state of mind, and what was the state of mind of the band to go with such an experimental sound for this record? What drove that?
Well, I think what drove that is exactly, it's really written in Moonspell DNA, in a way. It's like our engine. And even though it's hard for people and for the fans to understand, especially fans that have come, in contact with Moonspell since Under the Moonspell and Wolfheart, any religious, we are a bit always not completely satisfied with what we do. Of course, we get a lot of bad criticism also, by fans, etc. Butterfly Effect was one of such cases because people were not seeing it coming, especially in Europe back in the day in 98, 99. There was a lot of bands changing, whatever we were so calling like expanding our horizons, but there was also a big force in metal that wanted the bands and the fans to listen to power metal, to classic metal with high-pitched vocals, with no electronics, just good old guitars, double kick, etc. So there was a time there was a bit like a convulsion inside European metal. Some people were very classic, some people were just going to be outrageous. Not only Moonspell, but also Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, even Opeth. They changed a lot their sound into a more progressive style. So I think we were just not ahead of our time or something like that, but we were just free. Music for us was a free exercise. It still is. With Wolfheart, we loved the album. We were just kids, and we couldn't believe that the album would be such legendary after all these years for European metal, especially coming out from Portugal. But back then, I listened to it a lot in '95. But when it came, also to do all the touring, I already wanted to do something else. Then Irreligious came up. And with Irreligious, we were tired of being a little bit, in our opinion, by the book of gothic metal. So we decided to make Sin, which was an album that already incorporated different stuff. And Sin was such a polemic album, like it so divisive for the Moonspell fans, that instead of going back to the roots, so to call, we decided, just screw it. We go to a totally different direction. And with the Sign of Times, with all the electronic and the science, so we went to London, and the mind frame was actually being free and being as crazy as we could. Of course, we didn't have kids or something like that back in the day. So, but we were enjoying a lot of the so-called artistic freedom, and not to piss off people or whatever. It was just more something that has to do with the way we are as a band, that shows in our musical career, let's call it this way, or progress, that in satisfaction with something, it's always like the big fuel, big engine to get to something else, and then to take it from there.
Did you guys have any reservations, or were you guys a little bit concerned of how the fans were going to react to this album being so different and being so early on in your career? Like, if you release the album now, you guys are established, so there's a little bit more of a sense of comprehension that you may want to go in different directions with your sound. But so early on in your career, did you guys think that, wow, we perhaps going to piss off a lot of people, but at the same time, maybe we don't care. We just want to create what we want to create?
Well, it's impossible for a band not to think about their fan bases. I think you will be really ungrateful to state that we don't care about what the fans think about. Put things on a plate, and sometimes the plate with the fan reaction is not as heavy as what you want to do as a free musician, as an independent band. And I think each time more, you just get the hang of it. Sometimes people say music is self-expression. Music wouldn't exist without the fans, without communicating with the fans, without them buying and supporting you. So there's always a fine balance between things. And I think that normally a band such as Moonspell prefers the plate that has to do with being creatively free. Let's call it this way. This has happened a lot in the albums, and of course we always faced with that hard decision. But so to speak, I think nowadays times are different as well. Especially The only reservations we had back then is that our first North American tour was booked together with In Flames, and had Clayman, a fantastic album back then, and we had Butterfly Effect, which was a really weird album, and especially weird for the North American fans from Canada and the US, because we were coming there for the first time and we were not playing the best of. Eventually, we started off playing songs from Wolfart, songs from Irreligious, because that stuff people knew. There was always a small but very dedicated following in North America for Moonspell. But when we hit the Butterfly Effect button, it was a love and or hate thing for the crowds. Obviously, the memories are very enjoyable on that tour. I mean, we were always keen in touring North America. We never have done it up to, we already had a couple of albums under our belt, and everything was so different from Europe that we will never forget about it. And the band learned a lot, and learned also that sometimes the harsh conditions that we were faced there showed us how spoiled we were in Europe. And sometimes we didn't appreciate that. And when we started to North America, like when we came down to Europe, we were, I think, a much better live band. Also, and to conclude, I think things have changed throughout the times. 1999, like I said, up to 2001, 2003, let's call it this way, up until 10, 15 years ago, people were very keen in not having like this, how can I say, if we, of course, Portuguese have always to talk and to use food as an example, for everything, but they didn't like fusion cuisine. They wanted meat, potatoes, rice, whatever, fish. Yeah, so I think back in the day, people would listen, for instance, with all due respect, much faster, like a true metal fan, to Hammerfall, because they were giving exactly that. Obviously, I listened to metal for many years, so I know what Hammerfall was doing was just that, what Halloween was doing with Halls of Jericho and Keeper of the Seven Keys, which are albums I absolutely love. But also in that time, there was bands like Bathory and Celtic Frost and Slayer. So there was more diversity. And metal got a bit more professional, especially in Europe, with all the growth of the big labels. So there was a lot of sure bets that we can sell records by doing this. And then there was also the outsiders. But I think that, especially with the work of bands such as Catatonia, Opeth, and now newer bands like Leprous or Zealand Ardor, people just started also to give more room to bands that want to experiment. That's why our latest albums like Extinct, for instance, have been so well received, because it still has the same influences from albums that people didn't like at the time. But the mind frame of the metal fans nowadays is completely different. And some people even nowadays hate bands that have the albums all the same, and they are very keen in listening to what the bands have to offer. It all boils down to the disposition you have of listening to a record. Unfortunately, metal is diverse enough to give you the best of both worlds. You can listen to a band that you know that you're going to get, your dose of power metal, but you can go and be adventurous and listen to another band that you don't know what's going to happen with that record.
You can love it or hate the album, but there's one thing you cannot dismiss it, is how well put together the record is as far as the sound is concerned. Because you guys incorporated a lot of different sounds, a lot of different influences. I don't want to call it genres, I just want to call it influences. But you were able to create a signature sound across every single song. You don't feel like the album is broken up, like it doesn't feel like a collection of songs. It really feels like a record. How much work in the studio did it go into you guys being able to create an album that has this red line all the way through and still be very dynamic with the style and approach on every single song?
I think that's one of the best qualities of Moonspell. We can go very far, but we can still make it sound like Moonspell, even though with a different envelope or skin. I believe that I remember that the recordings in London were very, very crazy. We would just like sometimes we were thinking about to create a sound. Just there was a balcony in the drum room, and we wanted. I think we actually did smash some cymbals and some parts to get like this chaos in the end of the title song, etc. So that was the mood of the album, and I think it was just also we were lucky. In the process of making it sounding like an album and not just like a collection of songs, and it still have, like you say, a signature. Obviously, that the band was also, this album was more composed by Pedro, our keyboard player, and we are also going through a stage in the band that we lost our rehearsal space back then. And it might seem like a small thing, like the butterfly effect, but for a Portuguese band, it's a big thing. Sometimes it's still very hard, nowadays less, fortunately, to get your own room, to get your own studio, not to have to share with many other bands, you know, that just put beer everywhere, etc. And Moonspell always wanted to have their own, you know, wolf's lair, our own thing. And still to the day, we don't share our rehearsal room because we want to be totally free to go there at night, at day. It doesn't matter, it has to be ours. And back then, this album was more composed at Pedro's apartment, Pedro's flat. And that can see also that it wasn't a kind of composition or songwriting that we were used to. So to stitch the parts together, we had in the middle of all the chaos to focus, at least in the sound, and especially to tell us a story, because it's an album about chaos, it's an album about randomness as well. And it could be very easy to be even crazier than what it was. And then it will start to be dangerous for the band, because then we would lose the personality. We could innovate, that I think we did in our weird way, or we could lose every point of contact with what Moonspell was. And I think Butterfly, an album, is borderline between being an album that is recognizable as Moonspell, or that someone that has heard Moonspell will listen to it and say, what the hell is this? Oh, is this Moonspell? Wow, I have to, you know, listen to it again, or I'll just despise it and concentrate on the old stuff. So yeah, it was an album that involves a bit of danger over there. But back then, I mean, when you do the stuff, you can only have this conclusion in retrospect, I think, because when you're doing the stuff, you just tangled into it, and yeah, and you are thinking about the reaction, but not sufficiently enough because you don't know it, you know, because when you do an album, you never know, especially as band with Moonspell, if people will like it or not. It's a big gamble for us, even with the Portuguese album 1755, with the forthcoming album in 2021. It's not like we can plan a lot ahead, but it's also the kind of band we are. So I think that's in our nature, and that cannot be changed. Even if we wanted to, people will see, well, they're now trying to jump in some bandwagon, etc. And I think we're too old for that as well.
Did you approach looking back, did you approach the vocals differently on this record? Because I felt your delivery was absolutely magnificent. You changed, not your tone, but you changed a little bit of how you deliver on every single song in order to go with the mood, with the atmosphere that the tracks had.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I never consider myself like a magnificent singer. You know, I have lots of troubles. My ear is not good enough. And I always try by trial and error to be a good singer, because there's many good singers in metal, and even in music in general. I'm the guy that definitely appreciates a guy that can sing, like Dio, Bruce Dickinson, you know, even Corey Taylor is an amazing singer. I say even, I don't know why, because I really like Slipknot and the way that he sings, and then he also sings differently and melodic in Stone Sour. With me, the process is harder, so I try to compensate with being a good interpreter. I write the lyrics for Moonspell, as people know. So when I tag into the lyrics, I compare it to like an actor that goes and reads his cues on the script. So that's how I approach the songs. And with Moonspell, we always, crisscross between melodic and very aggressive, and Butterfly Effect had a lot of more melodic stuff, but also really in-your-face stuff. So I try to convey to those both parts. And I remember it wasn't about using technique. It was more about, being like more soul searching and singing. It's my kid. Tell me. Kid, Faust. It just wants to interrupt us.
It's fine.
But, huh? Calm. You want something from online. Oh, of course. But I was saying, so a lot of it was even crazy techniques that I used. I remember I bought a dictaphone, like these recording machines that people used to use for interviews. And sometimes I didn't like the sound of my voice on the microphone, so I just recorded to the dictaphone and put it on the microphone. So that's why sometimes there's this, it's not mixing effects, nothing. It's everything very, the influences are on this album besides science were the beatnik generation, the cut-ups, the things they did with music and art in general. So we kind of went there as well. Back then, I have a different opinion now. I think we are lucky, we are metalheads, and we like to do music. But at the time, I felt Moonspell to be a really artistic thing that we could experiment and do cut-ups and research difficult stuff. Of course, but then I grew up also and become a little bit less pig-headed about it. But on the other hand, for the vocals, every album, Butterfly Effect is not an exception. I always try to do a little bit better in terms of expression. And then obviously I need the technique. For instance, if I sing an album like Extinct, I had vocal lessons to be more in control of the tune and of the note. If I do an album like Butterfly Effect, probably I'll listen to more industrial music and work on the effects. So I think, in my opinion, as a Moonspell singer, I always have to be at the service of what the band needs from me, not only with the lyrics that I write, but also with the mood of the album. So that's why when I'm working on the vocal lines, I say, well, this is really cool that I do this in here, but probably I have to do a transition to other more screaming vocals like there, and I work on these resources, because I feel that I'm very humble about my vocals. I have still lots to learn because there's people singing really good on the metal scene, newer kids, older people. I really look up to always to a good singer, and for me, I'm not jealous. Well, maybe a little bit, but it's always great to listen to someone singing properly. My wife, she's a singer too, and she's very blessed with a great voice. And it's like when she opens the mouth to sing, it's like everything is perfect. You don't need to twitch the sound, etc. So I'm not still at that level. Well, but I'll keep on trying.
With this re-released on August 7th, new cover, new artwork, 2 new remixes, does it feel almost to you like you're releasing a whole brand new album out to the audience?
Nowadays, it feels a little bit because the album is still actual, like we talked. And it was a shot in the dark. But we said, well, it's butterfly effect, so why the hell not? So I wanted to redesign it with João, our in-house designer from Alma Mater Records. Obviously, it's like you never know, because sometimes people just cling very much into the tradition. But I always thought I love the original Butterfly Effect artwork. But I think the cover doesn't tells you anything, So I wanted something more stronger, more to the effect. And I approached João with some ideas. For me, I really like to work with the designers, but I understand that I'm not ordering pizza, so I cannot put more, tomato there and cheese over there. So I tried to give him like a carte blanche to, for them to work out, because I understand it's also an artistic endeavor for them to work out something. So I gave them some elements like the horse charge test, like the butterflies. I passed them a lot of stuff. I always do a little mood board for every Moonspell design, and I think he nailed it. The fans loved it. I think it's much more up to the album message, up to the album's strength. It's more accurate. It has this amazing cover that is a little bit like anthropomorphic. It looks like a skull, but it's a butterfly. All the lettering, everything, even on the extra single, because it's a fully stacked edition. That's very important for us to do something that is collectible as well, especially when it comes to the LP edition. There's this cover of the 7 inches with the remixes that it's almost like a pop art or something like that. But I think the whole package came out really, really nicely. And I think that's the way it should be. I have to say something as a disclaimer or something. We have Alma Mater Records, which is our own label here in Portugal, and we take care of Moonspell in Portugal, distributing, etc. Also, we do other stuff like releasing Portuguese bands, new Portuguese bands or older Portuguese bands to get them on the radar. And also, we work with Tiamat, Paradise Lost on their back catalog. And one thing that we want to serve the Moonspell fans is that we want to have everything from our catalog available to anyone, even if it's just one person that wants to buy it. And we approached Century Media back then, and we tried to buy Sin Pecado, we tried to buy Butterfly Effect, we tried to buy Darkness and Hope and Antidote, all the Century Media years, and they are all sold out. So they only go for really high prices, things like Discogs, Amazon, etc. So this is also a chance of us putting this together, especially for the newer generations of Moonspell that have arrived a little bit later into the band, to make it available, and also to, in my opinion, correct something that's, at least for metal music, it's a bit of a mistake. Yeah, it is not the 90s. Nobody sells 80,000 records or 100,000 like Moonspell used to sell, but there are people interested in having those records physically, and we must definitely cater to them, and that's what we do. Really. So instead of just being a trip to the nostalgia market that exists, and I'm a big client of it, I have to say,
Me too.
it's also a question of having these items available for the crowds. And also I always do the so-called executive production. I always go to the Moonspell archive. I pick up the mixes, I pick up the demos, I pick up the old photos, all of that. I'm not a very organized person, but I always have my way of things. I have something in the studio, I have something at home at an old computer. So for a month or two, I'm totally obsessed. Okay, let's get this going. And I'm very proud about this butterfly effect thing. Personally, creatively, it doesn't feel like a new album, but all the great commotion around it, it feels like people are very excited about it. And I think that's really cool, because it was an album that suffered a little bit with the reactions at the beginning, but after 20 years, a little bit more even, 21, I can say that it's not dusting in a shelf. It's coming out again, and I think a band needs to keep its past alive as well, especially Moonspell. We don't have a problematic relationship with our past. There's a lot of mistakes in there. There's a lot of virtue in there as well. So I'm quite happy that we can make these records available again.
The question I have to ask you now is perhaps a very difficult one to answer, which is, you guys have had such a long history. I mean, the band's been around almost 3 decades. Where does this album rank across all the albums that you guys have released as a band?
I would say it's the weird kid. If you weird but talented, like The Scientist. Sometimes it's hard to make a ranking because when you are in the band, you never talk like other people, let's call it this way, nor regular people. Because sometimes when I say, well, back in, I don't know the year anymore, but I know back in the irreligious days or back in the Butterfly Effect days. And that's more present in my, immediate memory than really 1999, 1996, 2001. So the metaphor I use, and when people ask me also to pick up from the record, of course, I have my favorite records as well, maybe for different reasons than the Moonspell, fan. I would say that definitely Butterfly Effect. If they are all my kids, whatever, my pro, they this is the weird one, that sometimes you're just angry with it, and sometimes he misbehaved a little bit with his friends, the fans, but in a way stands out. And I think I'm proud of that kid as well, because such a weird album done under such weird circumstances, with such a weird subject, the Butterfly Effect. It's a movie, but there's not a lot of albums, not a lot of metal albums. I would say that there's a lot of metal subjects, but nowadays it's more fantasy or Tolkien, Middle Earth. Butterfly Effect, science, chaos theory is not something that a lot of people write about. And I think that's what also sets this album apart. Not only the music, the weird apocalyptic electro metal that we did there, but also the fact that it has songs like Adaptables and Soul Sick and talking about things that immerse and interact with each other. I think there's a lot of nerds out there like me that like these odd parts of our career as well.
I have two more questions for you outside of this album. And the first one I want to ask you is, I saw the post that you've made about the possibility of a live stream. Now the album is coming out. Perhaps you could play some of these songs on that live stream. How close are you guys of making that happen? I think it's perhaps the best way to reach a huge audience, considering that there's no tours happening right now.
Yeah, I have to say that this is a very unfortunate business for the music industry. The COVID, all the politics involved, everything. For instance, in Portugal, there are cities that are allowing shows, other cities that aren't allowing shows. So we really need to think about it, and we really need to be patient first and foremost in order to take the right decisions. When this struck. We were very tired of touring because we did like a 53 dates tour with Rotten Christ back in October, November, December 2019. Obviously, we had a lot of festival shows coming up. I mean, I think tomorrow or in 2 days, I would be playing in Croatia or in Mexico or something like that, but I'm not. I think that we need to think about alternatives, but we didn't want to rush things, really. We just wanted to think about it, being considerate, because I think when the pandemic struck, even though music is very soothing and an important thing in your life, and I listened to a lot of music during this quarantine, I have to say that my family, my health came first. So that's what my main concerns. And artists need money, but they need a lot of attention as well. And probably Moonspell doesn't need that much attention like many people that do social networking every day. Like, with all due respect, that's not the kind of people we are. So, but basically, since March, we've been trying also to understand with the fans what would be their, if they will be open to watch us, not from the couch. The couch is to be with my kid, eating popcorn and watching bad movies, but really like a show, with lights and sound and etc. And they're very keen in doing that. So we do a yearly Halloween show, like Type O Negative used to do. We did a lot in Portugal. We did a lot already in some other cities as well. And in Portugal, it's quite of a tradition that people go to Halloween to watch Moonspell. So we probably will have something around that period for a small live audience, because in Portugal there's still a lot of limitations. But we're gonna stream it. People will have to buy a symbolic ticket, but I think people will be up to pay even much more than what I think they would pay. So I think we're gonna, before the end of the year, there's some stuff we want to do. We're probably doing some physical shows here in Portugal and maybe in France, and also we will do the streaming and probably drop a new song from the new album before 2020, and so that for the Moonspell fan, not everything is bad this year, and they can still get in touch with some of what we are doing right now.
And that leads me to my last question. I want to squeeze this one in because you gave us a little bit of 2 hints of a new album coming out in 2021. So what can you tell us about this new Moonspell record for 2021?
Well, actually, we when we could get together again in our studio, our main priority was to write new music. We had written a lot of stuff back in 2019, which was cool stuff, but I thought it could be much better. So I talked with Pedro and Ricardo and said, well, let's change a little bit. Let's take what's really, really excellent and get rid of all the other parts. And then we started a bit anew. So we still have to, a lot to do about this album, to define the concept. I think it won't be an album like 1755, which was a concept album sung in Portuguese. This one will be sung in English. Also, it follows up much more lyrically stuff like Night Eternal, Alpha Noir, Extinct. We were in the extinction, so the new album will be about solitude, which is a coincidence because I thought about this, writing about this way before the COVID. just left us hanging in our own places, not alone, but not in society as well. So the album will be a little actual about it. And if everything goes okay, because Portugal, it's not banned, but Portuguese people are, for instance, we wanted to record in the UK. We already hired the producer. His name is Jaime Gomez Arellano. He did The Last Paradise Lost, Obsidian. He did The First Ghost, Opus. He did Cathedral. He did, Over. He did a lot of bands. He has a great curriculum, and he's definitely a very nice guy. So we started working with him in September, and probably around Halloween time, we already have the master for the new album, which I think it will be out in February 2021.
Wow, something to look forward to. And all the darkness that surrounds us, Moonspell is giving their fans a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
I hope so, and I hope it's not a train.
Me too. Well, Fernando, thank you very much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on the channel. Best of luck with the re-release on August 7th. The Butterfly Effect will be out on Napalm Records. Pick it up. I've had a chance to listen to it already, and it's absolutely magnificent. I think it's like a fine wine. It's gotten better with age. To me, it sounded completely different now than it did when I first heard it when it came out in 1999, even though it was the same album.
We Portuguese, we do like our wine. So, obrigado. Thanks very much. Greetings to everyone. Stay safe and healthy. Vinho do Porto. Stay safe and healthy, and hopefully see you next year. 2021 is going to be a great year because like we say in Portugal, worse is impossible. So let's keep it going.
Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
All right, Pedro. Bye bye. Take care.